Hello again. I hope you all are safe and well. This week we are going to explore what I like to think of as the God hypothesis. I like to frame this debate and this puzzle this way in order to get us to detach from our own feelings and biases and also the traditions we were raised with. If you were raised as a hard-boiled atheist, I would urge you to step back and think of the God idea as a hypothesis for your consideration relative to the various observations we are going to be discussing in this class. And if you were raised on the other end of the spectrum with a form of religiosity, I would also urge you to step back and think this through philosophically in terms of competing hypotheses relative to various observations with the use of logical reasoning. That's philosophy. All right. Thomas Aquinas is a 13th century thinker who is famous for systematizing and articulating various arguments for the existence of God as a cumulative case. He came up with numerous arguments. We're going to look only at two this week, the first cause argument and the contingency argument. Both arguments go back to ancient Greek thought before Christianity, before Islam. But these arguments have become very famous, of course, within Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. But note, the arguments have origins prior to Jesus and Christianity. Again, I hope that gets you to detach and think about this not from a religious or anti-religious point of view, but from a philosophical point of view. Okay, so what you need to do this week is choose either the first cause argument or the contingency argument and articulate it in your own words. When I say cite sober, that doesn't mean quote him. It means simply make reference to the pages that you're drawing information from. Of course, you can also quote sober here and there, and whenever you quote, of course, you must cite. To cite is simply to name the source you're drawing from. But I think it's important that you quote minimally, and what you do maximally is put things in your own words in your own unique way so that you show that you really own the material. Okay, so you're going to choose either the first cause argument or the contingency argument. Write out the argument in your own words in your own unique way. Once you do that, address three of Sober's criticisms of the argument that you chose. And then finally, I want to hear your considered critical and creative philosophical reflections on this matter. And I ask you to consider three competing hypotheses. One is, of course, the God hypothesis, and how you define God is something I want you to think about. A competing hypothesis is to leave God out of the picture completely, to leave God out of your model, and to think of nature itself as infinite. If nature is infinite, and there was no beginning, there would be no need for a creator. Think about that. If nature is infinite and there is no beginning to the universe or the multiverse, there would be no need for a creator God. The God hypothesis would be logically irrelevant, superfluous, extra, you wouldn't need it. A third alternative to the God hypothesis and the infinite nature hypothesis is that the universe came from nothing at all, that the universe had a beginning, but it didn't come from something, it came from nothing at all. Those are your three basic options that I want you to think through. And I want you to use the surprise principle when doing so. For this reason, I'll add another link to the surprise principle video. One last thing. When you are addressing Sober's criticisms, I would urge you to not address the criticism that involves Isaac Newton. People seem to get really confused about that criticism. Isaac Newton simply presupposed in his model that things were in motion, and then he was interested in discussing inertia. If something's in motion, it continues on that same trajectory until acted on by another force external to it. But he just wanted to assume acceleration and deal with that model. And so some people have said, well, then that means that Aquinas' argument is outdated because Aquinas talked about motion. No, it does not mean that. If you talk about motion, or if you talk about acceleration and inertia, the question, the puzzle still remains: what initially started the motion or acceleration, however you want to talk about it? The question remains, what got it all going in the first place? So if you're going to address Newton there, make sure you get that right. Sober's conclusion is that when people talk about Newton's model versus Aristotle and Aquinas and others, they miss the point. Regardless of how you think about change in the universe, the question will remain, what started all of this to begin with? Okay, I think that's enough for now. I hope you enjoy this deep, complex, and interesting material. I hope it helps you grow and refine your thought. Take care.